You are 70% water.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're drinking your daily liters the way most of us do, you might actually be, like, actively poisoning your system.
Yeah, it's a wild thought.
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are spending some time with, a pretty paradigm-shifting text today. It's called Hydration Mechanics, the Science of Conscious Water Consumption.
Right.
And the core premise here takes something you do automatically. I mean, you might even be reaching for a water bottle right now, and it asks you to completely rethink the biology of it.
Completely, because we're conditioned to treat our bodies like storage tanks, basically.
Exactly. We track our ounces. We buy those massive bottles with the time of day markers printed on the
Right.
side.
Motivational quotes on the side.
Yes,
Yeah.
keep drinking.
Yeah.
Almost there. And we think as long as we hit our volume quota, we are, quote unquote, hydrated. But this source text ignores the volume almost entirely.
Right.
It focuses strictly on the mechanics, like the how and the when of water consumption.
And that shift in perspective is so significant because it treats the human digestive tract not as a funnel, but as a highly reactive chemical environment.
A chemical environment, yeah.
Right. Introducing a substance like water into that ecosystem using the wrong physical mechanics or, at the wrong time, it disrupts everything.
Wow.
From kidney filtration to nutrient absorption. It forces us to look at the actual physics of swallowing and the timing of digestion.
Okay. Let's unpack this, because the text gives us this case study of how most people operate, using this character named Seth Karadimal.
Right. Seth's chaos.
Yeah, Seth's chaos. Because Seth's entire philosophy is just about hitting the finish line. He needs to drink 4 liters of water a day.
Mm-hmm.
And his method to get there is essentially stand up, grab a massive glass, and just chug it in a single continuous breath.
Often right after a meal, too.
Right. And on the surface, I mean, modern fitness culture would probably applaud Seth.
Oh, absolutely.
You see people at the gym carrying those gallon jugs, actively trying to chug water to replace lost fluids. So I look at Seth and think, well, he's getting 4 liters of water into his system. How can the text argue this is physically damaging to him?
Well, you have to look at the velocity and the path of the water.
Okay.
When Seth stands up and chugs a large volume of liquid in one continuous breath, he is utilizing gravity to bypass the body's natural absorption pacing.
Bypassing it entirely.
Yeah. The water travels down the esophagus and straight through the stomach with incredible speed. And the text notes that this high-velocity deluge literally strikes the kidneys.
Okay, the word strike really stood out to me because it paints water as, like, a blunt instrument.
Well, from a biological standpoint, it kind of is.
Wait, really?
Yeah, because the kidneys are not hollow holding tanks. They're composed of about 1 million microscopic, incredibly delicate filtration units called nephrons.
Okay.
And they are designed to process fluids at a steady, manageable drip. They're regulating the balance of sodium, potassium, calcium in your blood.
So it's a delicate balance.
Extremely.
Wow.
So when you drop a massive, rapid volume of water into that system, the body registers a sudden, dangerous drop in blood osmolality.
Which means what exactly?
It means your electrolytes are suddenly way too diluted.
Oh, wow. So the body panics because the ratio of water to sodium is just completely out of whack?
Exactly. To protect your brain and your heart from that sudden dilution, the brain immediately signals the kidneys to just open the floodgates.
Just dump it.
Right. The kidneys stop filtering effectively and just dump that excess water straight into the bladder to get rid of it.
So you're not even hydrating.
No, you aren't actually hydrating your cells at all. You are just forcing your kidneys to flush out essential conductive minerals just to save you from water intoxication.
That is wild.
And the text points out that this causes chronic joint pain and systemic fatigue in Seth because the water is being expelled before it can ever actually lubricate his tissues.
You know, it reminds me of watering a bone-dry houseplant.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Like, if you take a massive bucket of water and just dump it over the top of the pot all at once, the water violently rushes down the sides.
Right, doesn't soak in.
Exactly. It hits the hardened surface of the soil, finds the path of least resistance, and just pours straight out the drainage holes onto the floor.
Right.
You gave the plant a massive volume of water, but the root system is still entirely dehydrated. The soil couldn't absorb it, it just survived a flood. By standing and chugging, Seth is essentially flooding his own roots.
That's spot on. The mechanics of gravity and volume basically dictate the physiological response. The body goes into a defensive flush rather than, an absorptive state.
So if standing and chugging triggers this defensive flush, the obvious question is, how do we actually get the water into the cells?
Right.
Because the text contrasts Seth's chaos with a method used by a character named Master Deinanath.
The opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, and Deinanath's approach involves a physical shift and a chemical shift. First, he sits down. Second, he doesn't just drink the water. The text specifically says he eats it. Right. Takes it sip by sip, holding it in his mouth before swallowing.
And that sitting down part is the crucial first mechanical step.
Why does posture matter so much for just drinking?
Because it completely changes the state of your nervous system. Like when you are standing and moving, you are leaning toward a sympathetic nervous state.
Like fight or flight.
Exactly. There's slight physical tension, your muscles are engaged. But when you sit, you signal the vagus nerve to activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest state.
Yes. The physical tension in the abdominal wall and the gastrointestinal tract just relaxes. The sphincter at the bottom of your stomach, the pyloric valve, isn't tightened by physical exertion.
Oh, so it opens up.
Yeah, making it much more receptive to passing fluids smoothly into the intestines, which is where cellular absorption actually happens.
Okay, so that covers the gravity and the posture, but here's where it gets really interesting to me. The phrase eating water is the part I really had to wrestle with.
It's an unusual way to phrase it.
It is. Because water is a neutral liquid, right? My initial reaction is that whether you hold it in your mouth or swallow it instantly, it's the exact same H2O hitting your stomach.
Sure, logically that makes sense.
But the text argues that by holding it and taking small sips, Deinanath is fundamentally altering the chemistry of the water before it ever even goes down the esophagus.
And that's because the mouth is not just a funnel. It is an active chemical processing center.
Okay.
When Deinanath sips slowly and holds the liquid, he is allowing the water to mix extensively with saliva. And saliva is not just water and mucus. It contains specific enzymes, and crucially, it is highly alkaline.
Highly alkaline.
Yes, it acts as a bicarbonate buffer.
Which matters immensely because of where the water is heading next.
Exactly. The stomach.
Yeah.
And the environment of the stomach is basically a vat of highly concentrated hydrochloric acid.
Right.
It typically sits at a pH of around 1.5 to 3.5. Yet it has to be that corrosive to break down solid food and kill pathogens. But the modern lifestyle, stress, processed foods, lack of sleep, it often pushes stomach acid into an overly aggressive state.
Just constantly irritating the stomach lining.
Yes. So when Seth chugs his raw, unbuffered water, he is just splashing liquid directly into that volatile acid vat.
Oh, that sounds awful when you put it that way.
He's literally shocking his stomach lining. And in some cases, flooding the stomach with raw water can actually trigger an acid rebound.
Wait, what's an acid rebound?
It's where the stomach panics at the sudden dilution from the water and just pumps out even more acid to maintain its baseline.
Oh, so that leads to acid reflux.
Exactly. Deinanath, on the other hand, by eating his water, uses liquid as a delivery vehicle for his own biological antacid.
The saliva?
Right. The alkaline saliva travels down with the small sips of water and gently coats the stomach, neutralizing that excess acid and calming the gastric lining. It's a targeted, slow chemical preparation.
So hydration becomes this process of lubrication rather than just fluid replacement.
Precisely.
He's actively preparing the digestive tract to function smoothly without friction.
And the text makes it really clear that water's systemic purpose is to seep into the tissues to lubricate the joints, the organs, and the digestive tract.
Not just to fill up the tank.
Right. By sitting to relax the vagus nerve and sipping to buffer the water with alkaline saliva, Deinanath ensures the water passes gently through the stomach, is accepted by the intestines, and is actually drawn into the cells.
Okay, so we have the physical mechanics of sitting, and we have the chemical mechanics of mixing with saliva. But the water is still entering an environment that has another primary job, right? Breaking down food.
Yes.
And this brings us to what I think is the most severe warning in the text, which revolves entirely around the timing of when you drink.
Yeah, the interaction between water and active digestion is where the systemic breakdowns truly occur in the body.
Because the text introduces this concept of the Jatharagni, which translates to the digestive fire.
Right. And we see this habit everywhere, right? Drinking a huge glass of iced water while eating a meal, using the water to literally wash the food down your throat.
It's so common.
But the text states that drinking water immediately after or during a meal extinguishes this digestive fire. And the consequence of putting that fire out is that the food sitting in your stomach does not digest, it rots.
It sounds extreme, but the distinction between digestion and putrefaction is pure biochemistry.
How so?
Digestion is fundamentally a process of heat and concentrated acid.
Hmm.
To break down complex proteins, for example, your stomach secretes an enzyme precursor called pepsinogen.
Okay, pepsinogen.
But pepsinogen only converts into active pepsin, which is the enzyme that actually cleaves those protein molecules apart in a highly acidic, hot environment.
So what does this all mean? If my stomach is a furnace trying to burn fuel, the food I just ate is the fuel, the wood I want to burn to extract energy and nutrients.
Right.
If I chug a massive glass of water right after I finish a heavy lunch, it is literally like throwing a soaking wet blanket over a campfire. That is exactly what's happening. The internal temperature drops and the chemical fire is smothered.
Wow.
The pH of your stomach rapidly rises from a highly acidic 2 up to like a 4 or a 5.
Because it's diluted by all the water.
Exactly. So the pepsinogen cannot convert to pepsin. The chemical breakdown of the food prematurely halts. And remember, your stomach is a dark, damp environment sitting at about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
A perfect breeding ground.
Yes. When partially broken down food sits in a warm, damp environment without the proper acidic concentration to sterilize and process it, bacteria begin to thrive.
Oh, gross.
The food literally starts to ferment and putrefy.
The wood doesn't burn. It just sits there, gets soggy, smokes, and eventually decays.
And that fermentation process produces massive amounts of gas, which causes severe bloating. The putrefying food creates toxic byproducts that irritate the intestinal lining as it slowly pushes through the system.
So you're not even getting the nutrients.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Your body cannot extract the vitamins, minerals, or amino acids from rotting food, so you become undernourished, even if you're eating a nutrient-dense diet.
Oh my goodness, this completely explains the second half of Seth Karadimal's misery.
Yes, it does.
The text mentioned he suffered from severe chronic indigestion. Well, if he is chugging his 4 liters of water standing up right after his meals,
He is systematically extinguishing his digestive fire 3 times a day.
he is forcing his meals to rot in his stomach.
It creates this whole cascade of physiological failure. Poor timing leads to rotting food. Rotting food causes intestinal inflammation and malabsorption.
Wow.
Couple that with his kidneys being mechanically shocked and his electrolytes being flushed out by the high-velocity chugging. His cellular environment is just completely depleted.
So the joint pain, the fatigue, the indigestion.
They're all downstream symptoms of treating water consumption as a volume quota rather than a mechanical process.
Okay, so how do we protect the fire? The text offers a very specific, rigid biological rule to allow the Jatharagni to do its job without interference. You must wait exactly 1 hour after eating a meal before consuming water.
Yeah, that 1-hour window is the biological baseline required for the stomach to mix the food with hydrochloric acid, break down the proteins and carbohydrates into a semi-liquid state called chyme,
Right.
and begin emptying that chyme through the pyloric valve into the duodenum.
So you are giving the furnace the time it needs to burn the fuel down to ash before you send in the cooling agent.
Exactly.
Though, waiting an hour sounds daunting if you are used to drinking throughout a meal.
Does take adjustment.
But the text argues that if you are chewing your food properly, which generates its own saliva,
Yeah.
you shouldn't even need water to wash it down.
Right. Relying on water to wash food down is usually just a symptom of eating too quickly and not mechanically breaking the food down with your teeth.
We're in such a rush.
We are. But when you separate the intake of solid food from the intake of bulk liquids by that 1-hour margin, you allow both the digestive system and the hydration system to operate at peak efficiency without, canceling each other out.
This is fascinating. We have extracted a completely new playbook from hydration mechanics today.
We really have.
We have moved entirely away from the chaos of volume and quantity. We know we need to avoid the mechanical shock of standing and chugging, which floods the kidneys and strips electrolytes.
Right.
We have the method of sitting down to engage the parasympathetic nervous system and eating the water sip by sip to utilize our alkaline saliva as a natural buffer against stomach acid.
Crucial step.
And finally, we have the timing. Protecting the digestive fire by separating our water intake from our meals by at least 1 hour, preventing our food from fermenting and rotting in the gut.
It really forces a transition from passive consumption to conscious biological management. You are manipulating the physics and chemistry of your own body with a single, incredibly common substance.
It makes you look at a glass of water completely differently.
It does. And, it leaves us with a necessary question to consider moving forward.
Oh.
We established at the very beginning that the human body is roughly 70% water. And we have just spent this entire deep dive mapping out how the simple mechanical act of how we consume that foundational element can be the difference between deeply lubricating our cells and actively causing systemic inflammation, indigestion, and kidney strain.
Right.
If we can be executing something as basic and instinctive as drinking water entirely wrong simply because we never stop to consider the biological mechanics,
Wow.
what other automatic everyday physical functions are we blindly performing right now, completely unaware of the internal chaos we might be causing?
That is a chilling thought. It really makes you wonder about like how we breathe, how we chew, or even how we sit.
Absolute.
So next time you grab that water bottle, remember, you are not just filling a tank, you are managing a highly sensitive ecosystem.